What's going on, vinyl community and Kiss Army? Welcome to the ninth episode of Council of the Elder, a series discussing the hottest band in the world with Kiss fans and people in the Kiss sphere, hosted by yours truly, the Record Spinner. Now, this episode consists of my interview slash discussion with Tom Jermann. Now, Tom is a graphic artist who is a part of the company t42design, and he has been associated with Kiss for the last 20 plus years, having worked on various box sets, compilations, tour books, and so much more. And I am always fascinated and interested with what goes on behind the scenes on these types of projects. So having Tom on as a guest was an absolute no-brainer, and we had an absolutely fantastic conversation. He, of course, touched on his background as a Kiss fan and how he got his start working within the graphic design aspect of the music industry at MCA Records, and the background of his first Kiss project, which was the 2001 box set. Then we touched on a bit of the making of the Dress to Kill and Alive box sets. He also went into detail on some of the extra steps taken into account with some of the Kiss Online exclusive vinyl reissues that have come out recently. And we also went beyond Kiss and talked about some other artists that he has worked with, such as Van Halen and Slipknot, to name a few. I have done enough babbling, so without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right, Tom, take us back to the beginning. When did you first become a Kiss fan?
It's going back to 1979. Me and a few buddies were way into the Beatles at that point, and one day, one of my friends, his older brother, and when I say older, he probably was like 13, 14, so he was like 4 or 5 years older than us.
Okay.
He gave my friend the single of I Was Made for Loving You. Now, this was a time when, groups like ABBA, Donna Summer, Diana Ross, it was
Yep.
full on disco. And that's the kind of music my mother was listening to. And luckily, we had a record player in our living room. And so one afternoon, I remember distinctively, my friend came by with the 7-inch of I Was Made for Loving You. And he's like, my brother gave me this. Let's check it out. I mean, this could be interesting because, just looking at the cover, I was like, who are these guys? And I remember putting on the record and not really liking the music because
Okay.
essentially it sounded like what my mother was listening to.
Fair enough.
The rebel in me. And so we're like, okay, well, we dug the guitar solo that we thought that was really cool. Then we flipped it over and Hard Times comes on, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, okay, now we're talking. So then I think the next day I went and bought the Dynasty record. And shortly thereafter, somehow I got a hold of the Kiss Alive 2, but on cassette, the German version.
Okay.
And then basically that, then the cassette didn't really do it for me because, I already had a sense of like getting into the artwork and all that stuff. So I asked my parents for a little extra allowance so I could buy Alive 2 on vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's that classic thing that happened to so many of us. You open it up and that gatefold photo, it's just like, what's going on here? And yeah, so we're all becoming Kiss fans. We're starting to buy all the German magazines, the Bravos and all that stuff. And we're collecting, cutting out every little snippet, all the posters and all the articles. And then at that point, we didn't really know much about the past of this band because, we were like maybe 9 years old or something, maybe going into 10. So for us, it was more about what happened at the present time, meaning the next record was Unmasked, which To this day, I love. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorite records. Yeah, it was not the hard rock record that
Nah, far from it.
a lot of the old fans wanted, but I still think there's there's a lot of great songwriting.
Oh,
And
1000%. I mean, even
yeah,
like if you listen to a lot of like the shows from that time frame, like hearing "Is That You" played live just gives it that little like extra kick that, not to say that the album version is lackluster, but it had a bit more muscle, let's just say.
yeah, and then obviously the Elder comes out, or actually before the Elder, I remember going to my local record store, which is sort of like a mom and pop electronics shop where you could buy, from your dishwasher, the coffee machine,
Yeah.
and then it also had a little vinyl section in a corner, and I'm just going through it, and I see this album called Kiss Killers, and I'm like, now what is this now? And I'm reading the songs in the back, but wait, this is not new. But then these other songs I don't know. So, and of course, back then, where did you get information from? It was from magazines, essentially.
Yeah.
So then, obviously, that led into The Elder, which I remember liking at the time.
Mm.
But what really then did it for me was when Creatures came out. That was like, okay, my sort of first taste of hard rock music, of a new album that I bought, and I remember buying it at a small import vinyl shop that mostly sold jazz records
Mm.
from the U.S. But so I still have my original Creatures copy. Imported from the US because I wanted the original logo, not the German version.
Of course.
Yeah, so then that sort of snowballed, and we all started, yeah, like I said, collecting posters, and have my ring binders with all the little things, and which eventually I stopped. I think once I took off the makeup, I stopped collecting bits and pieces.
That's when everything kind of tapered out.
Yeah, pretty much. Of course, I still followed the band, and I buy every new album, even throughout the '80s and all that. And then, of course, you get a little older, and then you start listening to other bands. And you got into like Stones and AC/DC and all the classic stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course, in the '80s, Maiden, Motley, Rat, and all that stuff, and the started broadening my musical horizon. We got into like some fusion jazz rock, and I started listening to other kind of stuff like '80s pop from the UK, and
Okay.
my musical horizon is quite broad. I mean,
And that's great. I'm the same way. Like my folks were progressive rock nuts. Like Yes and Genesis were my
Mhm.
vocabulary. Then I found Kiss, and I'm like, okay, that's my trajectory. So it's
Yeah.
spice of
So
life.
that was kind of my start getting into music in general. But what subconsciously I probably didn't even realize, but what I really got into is like the artwork of the album covers. The design, whether it was a logo or an illustration or a photograph, and started buying books about album designs and things like that. And I was always a creative guy. Like I was drawing from early on because my mother comes from a creative side. She was a trained seamstress, tailor. She would always make her own clothing and all that stuff. And started getting to like drawing all the logos for, yeah, obviously like the Kiss logo, AC/DC logo, Maiden logo, Stones tongue, and started develop parallel to my love for the music. I started developing a love for the graphic side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the whole thing. And yeah.
Does now you would mention like with Kiss Alive too, and like going to the extremes of saving up, to get the vinyl and everything. And I feel like I've heard it in when you appeared on Three Sides of the Coin that album in particular is so special.
Yeah.
Was it like, let's say, that album specifically, or were there certain aspects pertaining to Kiss's artwork and packaging that inspired you to pursue a career in graphic design?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I don't think it was a specific album per se of Kiss, because it was also, yeah, like the Beatles, that great album covers, and then artists like Pink Floyd, Led
Yeah.
Zeppelin. Then I started more trying to find out, well, who are the people behind the scenes who create that stuff? Whether it was. I remember around the mid '80s, we started buying uh, American music magazines, or British magazines like Kerrang, or yeah, from the US, we start buying Hit Parader and Cream, and I would always like try to, find like a photo credit, uh,
Hmm.
along a photo, and there were certain names that kept popping up. There was a guy called Neil Slozauer, there was Ross Halfin, there was Mark
Yeah.
Weiss, and others. And so I started like sort of developing an eye for photography also, and like what's a good photo, what's not such a good photo, and so it was more of a combination of all those elements that then, I mean, when I was in my mid teens, I had my sights set on studying architecture because I was really into architecture. I'm still today, but I eventually did an education as a architectural draftsman in Switzerland. But
Mm.
at the same time, I started making flyers or demo cassette designs for local bands, friends of mine, if they had a gig. And this was all very rudimentary stuff, like photocopy machine, cut and paste letters, and very primitive way of working. This way before computers. Um, And then one day, another friend of mine who was a few years older said to me, you can make a living doing this. And I said, oh, really? That's cool. That would be great. And so for me, it was always very easy to then eventually decide what I want to do for a living. And I was fortunate enough to, after my architectural education, to attend an American design school, which then eventually took me to LA in '94, with my sights set on getting a job in the music industry
Mm.
in Los Angeles. And luckily, I had a couple of instructors who had connections to people at record companies, such as, art directors and creative directors, who then, as I was, my last few weeks in my last semester, gave me their phone numbers, and I would go and interview for a job. And eventually, after my graduation in '95, ended up at MCA Records.
Mm.
As a junior designer, paid by the hour, was sort of full-time freelance. But it was a very small art department, and right off the bat, they put me on like some, big names. I was doing designs for like BB King, or Tom Petty,
Mm.
or I got to design the Ramones' last official album, because they were
Uh,
just
was it
breaking up.
Adios Amigos?
No, it was a live album. It was called, I think, Greatest Hits
Yeah,
Live.
great. It's like it has like the cartoonish artwork. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Those were I think weren't those scans from like the Spider-Man video?
exactly. Those
Yeah,
were.
I'm a huge Ramones fan, so when you mentioned, I was
Oh,
like, oh
okay.
yes.
Yeah, those were actually screen grabs from a VHS tape. We went into
What?
a video studio, and because there was no artwork, and the whole thing also was kind of a rush to put it out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so we went, and back then it was a very primitive way of, you know you make a screen grab, but then you have it's like a screen resolution,
True.
72 DPI, and then you have to convert it so that it prints somewhat okay. I mean, if you look at the artwork, you can kind of see little, jaggedy lines, and
Sure.
you know
Did you
but
also
yeah.
did you design the logo too that appeared on the cover?
Yes, yeah,
Because
it
that
was
was
so
like one of the radical things. Because I grew up, as a young kid, loving the Ramones. Like how like you had that classic logo on like those early records, which is just standard, all caps. But then
right.
it sort of deviates as time went on. I was kind of curious on that, if it was intentional to make a fresh look for them.
To be honest, at that point, I knew of the Ramones, but one of the types of music I was never really into was punk.
Sure.
But I knew of them, but not enough to sort of, oh, I should use the famous round logo
Yeah.
somehow in that design. So I had these screen grabs and came up with that brush. I did that
Yeah.
thing, and I was so I was at MCA for probably about a year and a half. I had a quick stint at a label called Maverick Records, which was brand new at the time, was founded by Madonna.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We stayed there for about half a year, but the situation wasn't right for me. And eventually around the time, that was about in 1997. I was lucky enough to, as I was a student, I met my future wife, who is still the better half of t42design to this day. So we ended up forming our own design studio. And once after I left MCA, I had a really good relationship with the people there, and they started sending us jobs. Whether it was greatest hits of the what was it, the girl band from LA,
Greatest hits girl band in LA.
uh the,
I'm
the,
trying to think too.
the, name slips, but it was like more like repackaging or
Sure.
reissues of this, and this was all CD stuff. And eventually, we worked on, like, we redid the entire Bob Marley catalog or Joe Cocker catalog. So it was establishing myself with sort of more, I would say, bread and butter kind of projects.
Sure.
But the people at MCA knew that I was a Kiss fan. So I think early in 2001, I got a call from the creative director at so in the late 90s, there was that whole thing in LA where Universal Music Group, it was this huge merger, right? So they consolidated all these labels, A&M, Geffen, MCA, Interscope, etc., all under the umbrella of Universal Music Group. But at the same time, they formed a division, a catalog division called Universal Music Enterprises. And the creative director from MCA then became the creative director at UME, which to this day is the company that puts out, like all the Kiss stuff or all these other big acts, it's Rush and etc. So yeah, I got a call early in 2001, and the guy from Universal, the creative director, he has a good sense of humor. He's like, "Oh, aren't you a big Kiss fan? What do you know about them?" I'm like, "I know everything about them." and then he goes, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, I was just going to go into my office and work." And he said, "Can you come to a meeting down in Santa Monica to discuss a Kiss box set?" And I said, "A Kiss box set? What are you talking about?" Because obviously, as we all know, Kiss had finished their farewell tour. And I remember walking out of their last show in LA. It was a bit outside of Los Angeles, and saying to myself, "Well, I guess I'll never do anything for Kiss because they're done now." Yeah, a few months later, I'm in a meeting with executives from Universal, and I remember it was a big conference room with a huge oval table, and there were two seats left, two chairs left. One was for me, and there was another empty one next to me. And I said, who's going to sit here? And as I'm saying that, the door opens and Gene walks in. And I had no idea that he was going to be there. And so basically we got to work on that box set you just showed me. And
this one here. And
yeah.
real quick, before Tom continues, I told him this before we recorded. So this is the 2001 Kiss box set. This was Tom's first project with the band. And this copy that I'm holding right here, because it came out in November 2001, I got this for Christmas that year, and I was 4 years old. And so when you give a box set to a 4-year-old, you know, it ends up looking like this over time. But I hold it near and dear.
They should have given you a soccer ball also, so you had something else to kick around.
Yeah, right. I mean, listen, I was more than happy with this. I was thrilled.
Yeah. So basically, how that project started was, I think it was around late spring. The band had a big warehouse out in the valley, in Los Angeles, in the San Fernando Valley, in sort of an industrial area, where they basically stored all their gear. You know, there's, pieces of the stage designs or guitars and drum kits, but they also had boxes and boxes full of 35 millimeter slides, and they were all in these I think they were called the slide drums,
like those circular just things that hold them all in.
Yeah, that you put on a machine with a projector that, people would use those back in the old days. So when they come back from their vacation and they'd invite people and it's like click, click, click. And then, so I spent, I think it was a good week, 9 days in that warehouse. It was about 95 degrees Fahrenheit in there. It was boiling hot, no air conditioner or anything. Clicking my way through these pictures and basically selecting photos for this very box set. And and then once I had my selection, I got going on the design of the book and the CDs,
How much would you say? Because obviously, by the layout of the book, I mean, there's more or less photos for every spread. How much of what you've gone through in those archives, all those drums, how much of those photos ended up making it into the final design? That's not to say just the book, but each disc comes in the jewel case with the triple fold out, insert. Would you say it was just kind of scraping the surface, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I made a quick calculation based on the amount of slides that I clicked my way through. And keep in mind, there's a lot of duplicates also.
Sure.
So I might have seen a certain image 12 times and then multiply that, throughout all the entire career, up until that point. Because this was, at that point, photographers were still photographing an analog. Digital wasn't anything that was really happening yet. But I probably looked through about 20,000 slides.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I probably ended up using maybe 200.
Jesus.
I mean, this was one of those exercises where I started to learn and understand, okay, you're given a ton of stuff, but you can only pick the very best. So I wasn't going to pick quote unquote outtakes. Yeah. I was going to pick the classic stuff, the photos that I grew up on, the photos that I had posters of, the photos that we knew. And of course now, 25 years or almost years later, I look back and I'm like, wow, I should have gone more for the outtakes,
That's what I was actually going to ask. Would you, if looking back now, because over 20 years, are the outtakes the main facet that you look back and say, I wish I could change this? Or what would you want to update it as? Are you pleased with the final product, or are there certain things that you're could have tweaked that up, could have done it this way? Or
Yeah, I mean, of course, if I look back, and I haven't looked at it properly in many years, but I still have it sort of very vividly in my mind. There's things that I would do differently. I mean, it'd be more specific things that I would have to point out on a certain page. But I think overall, with the knowledge that I had, um, and I would say, I had a pretty deep knowledge, but nowhere near the knowledge that I have now.
Sure.
In terms of the photography of it all. So now, of course, when I do work on these projects, I look for more the stuff that nobody's ever seen, or something
Sure, yeah.
rare. But I think back then the mindset was also, well, this is the career and this is the box set, and then that's it. There will not be anything beyond.
Well,
Well, as the saying goes, be careful what you wish for,
sure.
or like, so we did that, and that was really fun. I remember we actually in LA, we had an event at Tower Records on Sunset.
Yeah.
And that's also actually a time when I started working with Tommy Thayer, because at the time he was working for the band as sort of the day-to-day manager. You see pictures online from that event where he's got short hair,
got the polo and everything. Yeah,
the khakis. Yeah, he looked like he came off the golf course. Well, he did. But we forged a close friendship. And that was also the time when Ken Sharp started coming into the picture as a writer and as a researcher. And I started I was able, through talking to these guys, expand my horizon in terms of, like, for example, one of the things, until we did 5 years ago, we did the Destroyer box set. I wasn't really, as a European, I wasn't really aware how significant the Paul Lynde show was, that Halloween festival. Something that we, as kids here, we didn't really know about it. And, yeah, we'd see pictures, but we didn't understand, or I didn't understand until people would tell me, like, when I saw Kiss that evening on television in the US, this was like my Ed Sullivan, the Beatles moment.
I was just going to make the comparison, because you're a Beatles guy, as am I, as you can tell in the background. For many kids growing up in America, mid-70s, and this is just a little over 10 years after, the first appearance on Ed Sullivan in 64. That was that generation's version of that.
Yeah. So, we forged a really close relationship, friendship with Tommy and Ken Sharp. And and then I think the next project, if I'm not mistaken, was the symphony thing.
Well, did you do Very Best of Kiss? 2002?
Yes, the one with the 4. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we have a plaque back there. Is it?
Little show and tell.
Yeah, the Very Best of Kiss. Yeah. Yes, I did that. Yeah. That was, obviously kind of like a quick thing that had to be done.
Sure.
It is what it is, that thing. But
I mean, I do love the cover, though, because, like, you have the color auras around, like, each of the members, like, portraits on that cover. I thought it visually popped. And I remember, because wasn't that done in tandem? Because the Kiss did that 70s show, like, mashup thing for Rock and Roll Night.
Yes.
Because I remember I taped that off of TV when I was a kid, and they ran the commercial ad for Very Best of Kiss. And I remember freaking out. I'm like, new Kiss product. Regardless of the fact that it was the one of gajillion compilations that would come out in the next couple of years, it was still, in my head, it was registered as new product. So I was like, well, shit,
Yeah. Ironically, whether it was inside the booklet or on the back cover, I used this really cool shot from the Paul Lynde show.
Yeah, it's Paul's, like, has his legs spread, hand in the air. I think it's the end of Detroit Rock City, I believe.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, and then so we started, or I started understanding, well, this band is not over. Well, then, because at the Tower Records event, there really wasn't a band.
It
I
was
mean,
just
it
Gene
was
and
Gene and
Paul, and that was
Paul.
kind of it.
Yeah,
Like depending on the day, Ace would be there, maybe not.
right.
Peter was more or less done at that point.
So
So,
then, yeah, I think the next thing was they got this offer to do this Melbourne Symphony thing, and I was sort of given a heads up that what's going to happen. We did the tour program, which was the first one for Australia, and then yeah, the symphony packaging, the CD, and then the DVD packaging, and that was really fun because for one, it was we ended up with a kind of an unusual cover art. It wasn't the
hmm
typical like live concert photo. Although I presented ideas like that, but it's more to kind of get it out of the system because because this was also my sort of my working relationship with Gene and Paul started at that time. So I had to kind of feel them out. They had to wanted to kind of see what I'm capable of doing. And yeah, I remember we through Kiss Online we reached out to fans after the event to like send in photos of themselves and makeup or letters, and so we made this additional poster, and so we tried to make it like very personal, and so that was a really fun project. I look back fondly where I'm like, okay, yeah, this was really cool. Obviously
yeah,
the whole event was unique,
sure.
in that sense.
Yeah, I remember I got the DVD for like my 6th birthday, and my childhood was just spent rewatching that over and over. Good
Right.
memories.
Yeah, and then well, obviously this was the time Tommy comes into the band. Peter is still in the band, hanging on for a few more years.
Yeah.
And then I think the whole thing also with the tour programs started really happening. Like literally, I've designed every tour program since. There's probably been 15, not counting all the variants.
Sure, yeah, different
you know,
logos, different backdrops, and graphics
right.
for country specific. Yeah.
Adding a few pages, swapping out a few photos, and here you have version number 8.
Oh my god, I remember when End of the Road started. I kept saying like V1,
Yeah,
V2, and I'm like, holy shit, you know.
I know. I started adding that because I started realizing I'm like, okay, this is a living animal that will mutate over the next few years. There will be, and I did that specifically. Obviously, the very first one that doesn't have a V1 or so, I believe. But then the second version I added a little tiny little V2 on the
Uh-huh.
credits page on the bottom for those who obviously people have noticed that, and
Now,
because yeah,
what are like the differences between the very first one and obviously is it just tweaks along the way? I haven't done the full in-depth comparison because I have two tour books from that last tour. I think I have the first one when I call it the first US leg, and
yeah.
then I bought the final shows one like what because I went to the Garden. I bought that specific one.
Mhm.
Was it just adding like new photos of like the new stage production or tweet or including some older photo like explain some of the mere comparisons.
I think on the first one we didn't actually have any photos yet from the tour because the tour hadn't started.
So like no
Uh,
dress rehearsal or anything.
um, I would have to kind of go back and revisit, but because they didn't really. It was the same. They were wearing the same outfits as when they did. Let me think.
Because I think the last tour they did before End of the Road was what was it, Kiss World or something like that, and that
Yeah,
was kind of like a reprise of the Creatures
creatures.
outfits.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was like rehearsal photos or like a studio like staged photos. So I
Yeah.
think then the second one, that's when the tour started. We quickly, literally within the first few dates of the tour, I was fed like new photos. Like now that, and they quickly reprinted. We swapped out a few pages here and there, and
Yeah.
and that was kind of kept going. Like literally a few months later, okay, we need to change the cover because now we're going to Europe, or we're coming back to the US, which they didn't think they would go back to the city that they remember. They were saying, well, we play each city once and that's it. And
I mean, to be fair, I mean, because where I'm based at, Philadelphia is like the close proximity, and they never really went back to Philly. They ended up doing Atlantic City, which is like an hour the opposite direction, and that
yeah,
was more or less it. I mean, I remember a
okay,
lot of like secondary markets and such.
right,
Obviously, ending it in New York was obvious. And those last 100 shows, I'm not sure if there were any markets that they had already done, but
yeah.
but yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was, for me, it was great because, every few weeks, every few months, or maybe every half year or so, like, hey, Tom, we need to update the tour book. And, it was work, it was money, income. Like, okay, cool. Give me new photos. We swap out the cover or change something on the cover, a different version.
Mhm.
And then what I'm actually most stoked about is the Madison Square Garden. I said I really want to make a brand new cover.
Yeah.
Kiss in New York. So I came up with this design where they're like standing in, could be whatever, Fifth Avenue with
Yeah.
the garden in the background and stuff. And
Yeah, it was
so
it was it was a manhunt, let me tell you, at the Garden to find that program because
I
I don't
heard,
know if
yeah,
it was X amount of copies were manufactured or they allowed X amount of copies to be sold at whichever merch stand. But I remember wheeling and dealing with some poor MSG merch, you know, member to snag me a second copy for my dad who wasn't at the show with me. And I don't know if they caught any hell for it because like it was strictly allocated, but yeah,
right,
it was
right.
thrill of the hunt was the textbook definition for finding that tour book, and it's brilliant because I think the front has like a foil-esque kind of
Yeah,
like cover and
yeah.
everything. It's brilliant. It is so fucking sharp.
Yeah, so of course that for me as a longtime fan, that was a very nice sort of conclusion. And being I wasn't at the garden, but it was a nice conclusion being allowed to make a new cover for that version of the tour program to kind of, okay, this is it for the touring aspect of the
Yeah,
band. Obviously, I knew that the whole machinery is gonna continue.
in some
Um,
form.
and it will continue for some more years, or
Yeah.
I have no idea of how much longer. I just have kind of a loose idea of the next 2 years.
Sure, sure.
You
Is it
know,
safe to say that you'll be behind whatever is destined? I mean, obviously, with the Garden, they announced the avatars. Are you, without disclosing too much, if you are involved, do you have a heavy hand in some of that stuff, or?
yeah. I mean, I'm not involved in anything that Pop House is doing. That's
Okay.
that's that's none of my business.
So,
Avatars or I was not involved in any of the stuff they did for the Vegas event
yeah,
recently, which is fine. I've got too much work going on, but um, I love doing the packaging stuff, the box sets. I mean, doing two box sets, and I think you were going to probably ask me about this anyways. Earlier this year, initially, and we can backtrack after this quick comment,
sure,
but
yeah,
when I was told we're doing Dress to Kill box set, this was at the end of last year. I said, great. And then about a month later, when they found all those tapes from the concerts, I was asked, can you handle doing a second box set at the same time? Well, for a live. And I said, yes. I said, it will be a very stressful time for everybody involved because,
sure,
I mean, usually we put together a box set over a time span of about until it goes to the printer, from literally from inception, as in like when we start doing our research, whether for photos and all that stuff, until I actually hand in all the various files. I think it's between 5 and 6 months.
Wow.
So
just heavy, intense work from
yeah,
that
so
time
we're
frame.
basically pulling double duty. At times it felt like literally going to 2 jobs at the same time. Half of me went to the dress to kill job, the other half went to the alive job.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's not something I want to do again. I mean, it was too much, and everybody knew that going in, and even people at the label or Ken Sharp. I mean, but I think we kind of pulled off a little miracle here, and
1000%.
that was over the last some months. Like, people would ask me, well, why the delay? And I said the delay was the reason. Yeah, everybody would admit that it's not the perfect situation to put out 2 box sets within the span of a few weeks. I mean, for everybody's pocketbook.
Christmas was expensive this year, let me tell you.
Yeah, and everybody would have preferred to do it differently, but I keep reminding people, and I was saying this in was on the other podcast the
Was
other
it
week.
Kiss My Wax?
Yeah, with Jason and those guys. That what people forget is there was about a year and a half where everything was on hold.
No product.
Yeah, because of the deal that had to be hashed out between Kiss and Pop House.
Yeah.
So that basically put a stop to everything outside of us doing those deluxe and premium reissue vinyl things.
We'll definitely touch on those, yes.
Yeah, but the label wasn't given access to the things that they needed access to. So that was the delay that pushed everything back. So once we decided to do 2 boxes, the production lead time now, it's much better now. I mean, when we were doing Destroyer or even Creatures, we were still in COVID or coming out of COVID, so a lot of manufacturers were shut down.
Mm-hmm.
There was a huge backlog for every artist, whether it was Taylor Swift or Kiss. But so things weren't moving as fast, but it seems now we're sort of back to
things are normal.
Yeah, manufacture, but still, manufacturing a box set like the Alive you just showed, that takes about 2 to 3 months.
I'd imagine. And plus, don't you have to also, do you have to manufacture the right appropriate size box as well, to almost I don't know if making a prototype goes into it, because keep in mind you have the bottom layer, which has the replica press kit, the envelope with the newspaper and the photos, and then you have the hardbound book and X amount of gatefolds and whatever's on top. You have to be precise when it comes to
I mean, this is total engineering. So basically, once the manufacturer knows what we're doing, as in okay, the book, well, how thick is the book, how many pages? Okay, so then I can calculate, okay, the book's going to be
however many centimeters, maybe, or
14 millimeters,
yeah.
And then we have 8 vinyl records, and that adds this much. Then we have a replica of a tour program, and that's so they can very precisely, they'll make a blank dummy of everything. Sure. That then gets assembled, sent to the record company. Okay, everything fits perfectly, or this one feels a bit odd. We need to make this a little smaller, until everything just kind of fits perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a process. But yeah, the whole manufacturing, assembly, all the folding, all the trimming, and these boxes are all hand assembled. The pieces are being put in by people, not
yeah.
And that's why I've seen some comments here and there where somebody didn't have a mobile, or somebody had 2 mobiles,
or no Wildwood show.
Yeah, I mean, of course there's human error. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, it blows, but what can you do?
Yeah.
So obviously, if you're missing something, I'm sure you can contact the label and say, "Hey guys,
Yeah.
that poster wasn't in there. Can I get please a replacement or whatever?"
Or if you
But
get
yeah,
or like if you get 2 sets of coasters, you keep one intact for the box, and then you can deck out your man cave.
right,
Simple.
exactly. Yeah, but
Were
yeah,
those?
it's a long process to make these things, and then obviously then they have to be shipped to fulfillment centers
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. So um, it's not, I wouldn't say a complicated thing, because that's been done for many other artists and
Yeah.
products in general. But yeah, it just takes time to make stuff.
Off the top of your head, because obviously, and we'll mainly focus on Dress to Kill and Alive. I mean, there's been a lot of specs of that package, namely like the ephemera. Like, I think Dress to Kill has like a replica Japanese ad, and then obviously Alive, there was the banner on the back cover that was replicated.
Yeah.
What parts were newly designed to kind of give some extra bang? Like, which, off the top of your head, which parts would you say you freshly prepared?
Well, for both of these, there was actually quite a few things. Yeah, like stuff like the coasters, the keychain, the some of the stickers, or even perhaps posters. What else do we do? Oh, one of the things that I thought was really cool. So my friend Jason from Kiss My Wax got me in touch with John 5.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, he's a massive collector.
Oh, yeah.
And he owns the original bass drum head that's on the cover of Alive.
Oh, that's from his collection.
Yes. And
Shit.
so I had him had that photographed, professionally, and I thought it would be really nice to make a nice, obviously reduced size.
Yeah.
Essentially, probably like, I don't know what the original was, a 20-inch or
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So things like this, or like the mobile, those are new ideas. But when we do these kind of things, the idea is like, what if that was done back in 75?
Mm-hmm.
With the same spirit in mind, right?
Same
Because
aesthetic too.
yeah, the aesthetic, and because one of the things that I realized after the first 2 box sets was, while I was talking to collectors and getting their feedback on, replicating a poster to the T, they said, well, make it a little smaller, or make it a little bigger, or change something so that it's not like the original poster.
Yeah.
Do not, because obviously you want to avoid people then trying to hawk stuff on eBay or whatever.
Sure.
Saying, oh, I got mint copies of the original whatever promo poster or something.
Well, hell,
So
even like on the program, it says like 50th anniversary, whatever. So it's a dead like giveaway right there.
right.
That
So
is.
I added that to make it as obvious as possible that
Yeah, that's smart.
this is a replica of 50 years later. Some of the stuff, yeah, I pride myself in replicating it very precisely and making it look as it was literally brand new. Other things, I had a conversation some years ago with a collector in the Netherlands, who basically said, come up with new stuff. Don't be afraid of creating a new poster in the style of what it could have been from back
Sure.
then.
Yeah, like place yourself back 50 years and be like, what would have they done?
Yeah, or like some of the iron-ons, or
I always
things
love those. The iron-ons are cool. I'm like, man, if my box came with an extra iron-on, I would put that to use.
You can actually iron them onto your
Yeah,
t-shirt.
like
Yeah,
the material is authentic. It is.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think on these 2 boxes, there were more things in them than on the previous 2.
Sure.
Which is kind of ironic, because when we started on Dress to Kill, you know, I usually have a lot of conversations with Ken Sharp. We brainstorm, we throw ideas at each other, and some never make it, and some obviously get developed. But I remember we were kind of worried that, I remember saying to him, or even almost simultaneously saying, you know, there isn't a lot of stuff that came out in 75. They didn't do a lot of stuff like promo stuff or things like that. Of course, there were, the promo poster. But there wasn't as much stuff as with some of the other records. But I said, you know what? That actually gives us the extra challenge to come up with new stuff.
Sure.
You know, so, and even with photos, I mean, we found stuff that I've never seen.
Yeah, that was my like takeaway as I was flipping through the books. I'm like, I mean, obviously, because I think from a creative perspective, you want to entice, you know, buyers with stuff that has not been seen. Because obviously, I mean, over the years, we, you know, with whether it's compilations or whatever, there's this a small circle of photos that, you know, we see replicated quite often. But when I was going through these hardbound books of these sets, it was astounding how much fresh material was there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, whether it's Ken Sharp found this, I think it was it the lighting director during Kobo? He had these little,
the notes.
The notes,
Like for each song, like who sang lead and such.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, and of course, I always kind of geek out on the tape boxes.
Yeah, I love that stuff too.
Right. I mean, to me, that's like pure Kiss eye candy, like where you see, okay, track 4 lead guitar, and then, you know, track 5 blow, you know, on the track sheets. That to me, that's really cool stuff. I mean, yeah, it's super geeky stuff, and if you're a musician, if you've been in a recording studio and you see this, I'm like, okay, this is really cool.
Sure.
Because that stuff nobody's seen other than the people that worked on that stuff.
People in the circle.
Yeah.
I did want to ask real quick too, because obviously from a consumer perspective, I mean, 2 box sets within weeks apart. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's making up for the lack of product the year before, but also it's like, holy shit, like I need to recover first from the initial one. You know, it's not like you can have $400, you know, to fork out for a vinyl box, including the shirt. You know, we can't forget that. But when it comes to like putting these sets together, because like you said, your job one was Dress to Kill, then you had to do a live. Because you've been doing these sets since Destroyer in 2021, do you more or less sort of like follow similar templates that kind of make assembling it easier? Because I noticed like flipping through, like sometimes how the text is laid out, or sometimes like if you're looking at a spread, you'll have like a horizontal photo take up 75%, and then you have a vertical one on the side. I've noticed that replicated. Does it make your job a little easier?
It definitely does. It definitely does. But it was the idea, and not that I was told that there was going to be a second box set after Destroyer, but my gut told me that there will be. So I was like, okay, I'm going to settle on like a font for the text.
Yes.
I'm going to settle on like a general way of the layout. On a, like, if you noticed, one of the little fun things that we do when you open the book, there's the first blank page, and it's basically a newspaper snippet,
like a little clipping.
Yeah, that kind of like sets the stage for what's to come. And then of course the style of the box with the frame on the outside.
Yeah, I do have to say, I love that it's all unison between what's been out already, what's now, and perhaps what's to come in the future. Smart. It's brilliant.
So of course, and with the spine that you have, because we all like to have stuff on our shelves and then like nicely lines up. And so the only variant that I allow myself on the outside is that color. that I pick, which usually I pick in a very spontaneous way. Like I think actually Dress to Kill is quite easy because Dress to Kill to me, like, that gritty New York,
like and plus like the photo is like very monochromatic as well, so
yeah,
it works.
So I wanted that color to be sort of more like a dirty sort of gunmetal gray, silver. Any kind of color wouldn't have made sense to me. But then when I picked the color for Alive, I was kind of looking at like the area left and right of the logo, and you have that sort of magenta, burgundy,
like the
reddish,
the light colors,
going on. And then of course I have to keep in mind what I've done in the past. Okay, I've done the dark blue. I've done the sort of pink thing on creatures. So I have to kind of visualize, okay, once they're in the shelf, that they, so you don't have like two reddish colors next to each other.
So it kind of creates like this subtle gradient as you comb through your shelf and you see it all there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I definitely have established sort of a general template, which I mean, it's sort of part of the whole branding, right? And whether it's on the outside or on the inside. But so you open it up and it feels familiar. With, of course, I would add like textures in the background, sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on what it needs. But yeah, I mean, I think both of these books are actually even bigger than the previous ones. I think Creatures was around 80 pages, and these are 100.
100, yeah. I remember that. It's astonishing too because, like, for me as a fan, to have a super deluxe box for any of those 70s records is a wonderful gift. But you think about it, with Dress to Kill in general, it was a rushed effort, and only so much exists, but yet here we have a full-on 8 LP box with all the tchotchkes, a book that tells such an in-depth story of what goes on. I mean, it is as great of a deep dive as any fan would wish. So it's really remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I always say like the tchotchkes and the posters, that's all fine and fun, and but to me, the heart of the box set is the book, and then of course, then you have either the records or the CDs and the Blu-ray. But there's so many. It's quite incredible what Ken manages to conjure up. I mean, he did interview Ace several times for both boxes, so there's new quotes from Ace in there. Interviewed Gene and Paul, went back to Bill Starkey and the kids on the back cover. Well, not that not that they're kids anymore, but
sure.
Yeah, so he goes back to basically whoever's still around,
whoever was around, to tell the story.
And then of course, like in this case, he did extensive track by track and in general interview with Eddie Kramer.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those things maybe few people know, but when we were working on Creatures of the Night, he was over the period of a couple of months interviewing Michael James Jackson. And as he was concluding his interview, I want to say a month later, we literally were about to send all the files, especially of the book, to the printer. And I think a day, two before, Kiss was on tour in Europe, and I get a text message from Paul Stanley, and he's like, Michael James Jackson passed away. And because, those guys were really close friends. And I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And, but at the same time, we were really happy and lucky that we got to interview him, or Ken got to interview him for Creatures of the Night. Now, would have been great to like add another interview about Lick It Up for a potential future Lick It Up box set. So it's really become a race for time. And as we saw, um, super, to me, very bizarrely, Ace dying on the very day that the Dress to Kill box set gets
Yep.
released.
I
So I
literally that day went from euphoric as hell. Like
Yeah,
I was ready. I was so ready for the announcement. And then all of a sudden, shortly after I placed the pre-order, I started seeing, things pop up, and then, sure enough, I find myself at the pub, having pints in honor of Ace. So
uh,
that was a weird day. Very
it
weird
was
day.
it was really really strange. I mean, for all of us, obviously, it was just super bizarre. Of like, I even like caught myself maybe for like quick second, like, damn you, Ace! Like today, seriously?
Of all days. Of
You
all
know, for all the
days.
days of the year. I mean, in sort of like maybe more English black humor. But yeah, luckily we got Ace on these two boxes,
Yeah.
and who knows, maybe Ken was able. Well, they're him and Julian Gill are working on this. They have been for quite
Yeah, yeah.
on that book, which I saw a prototype a year ago when I was in Los Angeles. It's a monster of a book, and when that book
Oh,
comes
yeah.
out, minds will be blown.
Oh, hell yeah, it will.
It
That's awesome.
I just kind of thumbed through it as Ken and I were having lunch, and there's photos in there nobody's ever seen, and there's stories in there nobody ever knew of, or information that it's so.
Oh,
it,
hell yeah.
yeah, that's going to be an incredible book. So yeah, I mean, it's always a bit like scrambling for, like, okay, who's still around, who can...
Sure, yeah. It's like what can we scrounge up before, God forbid, anything happens, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah,
crunch time. Just to shift gears real quick, another thing that you've had a heavy hand in recently are the Kiss Online exclusive anniversary vinyl reissues. And the artwork for these pressings alone surpassed what we got in 2014. And
yeah.
I was going through the T42 website, and this is one of the ones, like, before I even went on there, I knew that this was a standout. You can't really catch it too much well on camera, but this Hotter Than Hell cover is tremendous. I mean, all the artwork. I mean, even the one for Unmasked I thought was fantastic. What can you share in terms of what into making these covers look more vibrant than they've ever looked?
There's, in general, there's hours of retouching, because what people need to know is, in many cases, the original art does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
Or if it doesn't exist anymore, it may be in the possession of somebody who bought the original painting at some auction years ago, but nobody knows who this person is, you know.
Yeah.
So I remember even getting a hold of Victor Stabin, who did the cover for and the poster for Unmasked, in the hopes that he has at least a scan of, or a photograph, a high-res photograph of the original art, but he didn't. So what happened in 2014, that the label, and this is where I was not as in-depth involved in all that stuff, although I did put together probably 6 or 7 of those records, but it wasn't with the, and that's one thing I would change. Like the mindset was just not, it was just, okay, redo Lick It Up as is, redo
Mhm.
this, redo that, but with no, well, I would go and retouch a few things, because a lot of this art had to be scanned from actual
Yeah.
jackets.
Tom Shannon's collection.
Exactly. And so, if when you have a printed piece, whether it's on a piece of cardboard or a paper, you have what's called a moire pattern. You can see this sort of texture with it throughout the printing.
Hmm.
And trying to reprint something, it's kind of like making a copy of a copy, not even having the original, but you start with a copy of the original, and then you make a copy of that, and maybe you have to make another copy. And how can you make that third copy better, or make to look like the original looked like, or somewhat close?
Hmm.
So I spent hours retouching stuff, and luckily now we have some, AI tools in Photoshop that help you
Bring
get rid
out
of,
some
you
inner
know,
detail.
or get rid of certain, yeah, that moire pattern thing to an extent. It's a lot of tweaking. It's not just pushing a button
Sure.
and boom, oh, it looks awesome. But in the case of Hotter Than Hell, probably my favorite Kiss cover. But I always thought, especially the photo, I always thought it looked like shit. So I took it upon me, and I basically, in what's called a program called Adobe Illustrator, I rebuilt the entire artwork from scratch.
Mm.
And luckily, I had a high res version scan of the photo, which the actual photo looks even better than how I tweaked it for the cover. Because
Mm.
if you look at the original cover, the photo is all muddy and just,
I don't know if it's like extra contrast where it distorts a lot of the inner details, I feel, but it is like a dark kind of grainy.
yeah, yeah. And so I didn't want it to be super perfect like the actual photograph looks like.
Yeah.
I darkened it a bit, made it a little bit more muddy, but not
Hmm.
as far as the original was. Because I was like, out of all these years, I was thinking, this what a pity. This could have been so much nicer.
Sure.
So when it came to doing the that album, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna put in the extra hours without actually asking Universal for extra money to do this. I can compensate that with, with other things, but I rebuilt the whole thing, and I was really really happy with the result.
Yeah, I think I remember when I got it, I looked at it. I'm like, this is like a whole new cover. Like
Yeah,
it is completely just revamped and redone, and it looks magnificent. But even like I think before these anniversary things were a thing, like I think when Universal just started doing those colored pressings, like I think Destroyer was the first one, and they did Dynasty, and then the debut. I think they were just still recycling those 2014 jackets and just putting in fresh vinyl.
right.
Whereas now,
That's pretty much what happened. Yes.
yeah, and now it's this whole thing where, the presentation is just hits another level, and it looks absolutely tremendous, let me tell you. Without disclosing too much, is it
Mhm.
safe to say that the Kiss Cam slash Universal has you busy going into 2026 with potential future projects?
Oh yeah. In fact, actually, already started with a couple of things
Mm,
this week and last week. Just, yeah, going into the new year, there will be, and you had Jeff Fura from Universal at the Vegas event,
yeah.
and he was talking. So yeah, there will be more box sets in the future. There will be more vinyl reissues. There will be other stuff that audio things that they've uncovered that we're sort of brainstorming about right now. So there will be stuff for the years to come.
We love to
For
hear
sure.
that.
And if anyone can add one and one, obviously Pop House and Universal are very focused on the whole big, golden anniversary. So um, that's kind of the focus for the years to come.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that in between there may be another box set that should have come out like 3 years ago, or that should have come out
Oh, okay.
2 years ago, that may come
Okay.
out 2 years from now.
I'm smiling because I know exactly what you're talking about. For anyone that wants to know, do some research. You'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, it's we try to keep things. I hate to use the word sort of secretive, but um, I think we try to keep a sense of surprise. I
Sure.
think, and I think we, in a way, kind of in unintentionally managed, because I'm online reading about people um speculating. One guy would say, "Oh, so and so said there will be a Dress to Kill box set by the end of the year," but somebody else said he talked to Gene, and Gene said there will also be an Alive box set. And so, what is true? What is, or you know, uh, so I think when the Alive box dropped, that sounded like it was people were kind of like, "Whoa, didn't expect that." Actually, how
I
did
mean,
you know?
to be honest with you, the big surprise was Dress to Kill for me,
Hmm.
because initially my idea was, I'm thinking to myself, maybe they're doing like a general 75 box and including the two albums, all the shows, and this and that. But I mean, to have a whole separate thing for Dress to Kill alone, I mean, that was the big surprise for me.
I mean, I think in the beginning when we were just talking about the Dress to Kill box, that would have included things that are now in the Alive box for
Yeah.
sure. So the big challenge was, okay, so the band is in the studio early in the year, the record comes out, they start the tour, they play Kobo and all these other shows, they record the shows. Then September 10th or whatever it was,
Hmm.
Alive comes out. You have the Kiss Army event, you have Cadillac, you have all these other events more towards the end of the year. How do we split it up?
Hmm.
Just in terms of what Ken and I were doing with the words and the visuals, because my worry was, again, I don't want to repeat anything. I mean, I think the only thing that I repeated actually was within the books was the cover itself, because it had to be shown
Yeah.
when they talk about the artwork and all that, or the photo shoot and all that stuff. But I think, and that in a way made it a little bit easier, because they were like brother and sister, yin
Sure.
yang, like Dress to Kill, Alive. One happened because of the other happened.
Yeah.
The other one couldn't have happened without the other. Um, so I think also when you read the story starting in Dress to Kill, and then you pick up the book from Alive, the story continues, and I think we did a pretty good job managing, but it was a lot of discussions, a lot of, and
Sure.
of course there was discussion on the side of the label. They asked us, what do you think, like, should we put all the live the five concerts just in the Alive box? And I said, well, do you have enough material for Dress to Kill
Fair.
then?
Yeah.
Well, and so that's where the idea came about, to split that part up.
Which
Now,
does make sense. I mean, I'm not going to go into a crazy tangent about it, but I think after listening to those Raw shows, I'm led to believe that as much as Kobo was hyped, and rightfully so, big sold out arena show, 12,000,
right,
I don't think a lick appeared on Alive as much as it's hyped up to be. So I think, yeah, it exists within this parallel time frame, but at the same time, it does belong, I think. Even like the first Davenport show, like, yeah, like Gene references Quad City and Let Me Go Rock and Roll. That's from the second show. So it makes sense to, take these two that maybe weren't touched on, feature them here, but then once you get to the Alive box, you can really start piecing the puzzle as to where songs came from, and then you come to realize, I don't know if Detroit was ever touched.
right. Yeah, so I mean, it was a really exciting time, actually, this first half of the year. We were all a little bit exhausted,
I would
once
imagine.
once all the files went off to the printer in, when was that? End of June, early July.
Were they both simultaneously submitted?
About a month apart from each other. Yeah, Dress to
Okay.
Kill was done about a month before Alive. Yeah.
So was there like a little bit of extra wiggle room to kind of work on the Alive set before that got submitted? That way, it kind of
Ye-
gave you that sort of grace period.
yeah, definitely, definly. Yeah.
That so did you go back to Universal and say, like, for next year, do not make me do this again? or do you find yourself, since you've done it already, it kind of gave you the test to like be like, okay, maybe I could pull this off.
I could. I don't want to do it again.
Okay.
It was just too. I mean, I think I speak for everybody who was involved. It was too much.
I imagine.
And I work very efficiently, and I have a lot of I have a lot of experience by now. I can work really fast.
Yeah.
But when it was, let's put it this way, it was a lot of weekends spent working also.
Yeah.
And I don't mind working a weekend here and there if there's a deadline on a Monday or something. But if it's like weekend after weekend and like yeah.
That's so basically what you're saying is all those weekends spent means that you're spending that extra time skiing in Switzerland.
Well, let's put it this way. Once a live box set was submitted, I pretty much took off July and August and didn't do a whole lot other than
Fair
like
enough.
some gardening or go on vacation, play some golf.
There you go.
Play my guitar, work with my band, stuff like that.
Well deserved. Before we wrap up, obviously we've been talking about Kiss, but I want to touch on some other things that you've had a hand in. So you have designed Slipknot's first 2 albums and more or less established their graphic identity. And since you came on board so early on in their professional career, would you say that your work was crucial enough for them to carry a certain aesthetic throughout all their future covers over the next 20 odd years?
I would, yeah, I would believe so. I still think, and people tell me this to this day, and I'm not one to sort of dwell in the past, and I like to look forward and know what's next. But those 2 are definitely records that even helped us as a business to get to the next level. I mean,
Sure.
And with Slipknot, I remember the lady from Roadrunner Records calling me one Friday afternoon. I was literally about to shut down my computer, and she said, we signed this band from Des Moines, Iowa. And I said, where is that? I mean, it was more like a joke, right? But and she goes, well, it's 9 people in the band. They all wear weird masks and jumpsuits. And I said, that sounds like right up my alley.
Yeah, there's some parallels. Yeah.
So yeah, I met with a couple of the guys there in LA, and we just kind of, and then we had the great photographer Dean Carr involved, shooting a lot of the photos at the time. And so the first album, yeah, it takes off. I sort of implement a design style with all the scratches and the chicken scratch lettering and the crazy. And obviously, this is completely different work that I do for Kiss, right? This is where really like you can go kind of crazy with the design,
sure,
and really dive into like deeper stuff. Luckily that, as we all know, that first album did really well. Then we started working on the second one, and the second one, of course, Iowa, really blew up. And yeah, it was a great time working with those guys. And then and then a bunch of the other Roadrunner bands came to us, and because they heard about us, and so we ended up working with Fear Factory and Machine Head and a few of the other ones, and that was really cool. And I kind of put our business T42design on the map and gave us credibility as a new young design studio. What I needed to make sure at the time is that we don't get pigeonholed as like the heavy metal or new metal design shop.
Sure, yeah.
But luckily we also, through my connection at Universal, we yeah, we worked on projects for like Johnny Cash or, you know, various other completely different types, genres of music where, you know, you could balance it out and say, yeah, we can go this way, we can go that way. It's, you know, it's all about the individual
Sure.
artist and what kind of result you try to achieve.
That's awesome. Fairly
Yeah,
recently, though, the Sammy Hagar era Van Halen albums have been going through a much deserved reissue slash box set campaign. You've had a hand in those, as
yeah,
well as these Record Store Day exclusive titles. We have Live in Dallas '91. We have Live at Wembley '95. Um,
yeah.
does your artistic vision for these kind of titles in particular, do you have any reference from things that stem to when these albums first came out, or are you pretty much given free reign to create what you want to create for these things?
For the live albums, Rhino really gives me sort of carte blanche. I come up with a few ideas. I would make some rough kind of mock-ups of cover art.
Mm-hmm.
Then they run it by, you know, the remaining band members and the management. And yeah, it's I, I usually get my way. We just finished the next one that's coming out next year.
Oh,
Um, and then obviously that also with the actual album with the sort of extended, you know, box set or sort of, they call it deluxe. Was it called deluxe edition?
like super deluxe. It's one of those like all encompassing like CD, Blu-ray, vinyl, all in one book
Yeah, with like a
style.
34 page booklet
Yeah.
with photos and you know, info and stuff like that. And you know, I am a huge Van Halen fan.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was, you know, personally knew Eddie. We actually started his merchandising uh, part of the EVH brand together years ago, and you know, he was and still is my biggest musical hero. And so to get to work on these projects is, you know, I look at things as like I get this opportunity, and perhaps I have the eye and the knowledge, and I know what needs to be done, because it's such a huge honor to work on, whether it's Kiss or Van Halen, of course. I mean, you know, had you asked me when I was 10 years old in my living room, my bedroom, you know, posters all over the place from all these artists that I get to work with now, whether it's Alice Cooper or, yeah, Def Leppard and um, bands like that. So I try to give them, each of these projects, the utmost attention and care that I think it needs. And um, there's no cutting corners with me. I either do something and I do it really well, or I don't do it at all.
And you know what, and it speaks loud because, you know, like I said, for someone like myself, I mean, I was born in '97, so I was a young Kiss fan growing up around the time of the farewell going on. And when you
Yeah,
have things like this, very best of Kiss, Kiss Symphony, I mean, those are all things. And I'm just telling you this as like a whatever generation fan I'm in, whether it's the classic, Ken Kelly covers or Dennis Wallach photos. Like for me, this is my upbringing, and what you've had a hand in, particularly with Kiss, but also other stuff as well. It's left such an imprint on me when it comes to looking at the band through that visual lens. So it's I could definitely sense that everything that you have done is so in depth, and there is like you said, there's no cutting corners, and it gives due diligence to the artists that you work with. So it's truly remarkable. And I
yeah.
think one final question, because I'm reminded, because funny enough, my second favorite band is Pink Floyd, and obviously Hypnosis have done books that break down everything that they've done. Have you ever considered doing like a T42 like Chronicles book, like including like projected ideas, rough sketches? Has that ever come up in your mindset?
Um, the problem with that is you know, when I work for Universal or Roadrunner or Rhino, it's a work for hire deal, which means that once I create artwork,
It's
I get
theirs.
I get paid and it's theirs.
Okay.
Now I can use it for promotional purposes. I can have it on my portfolio. I can put it in my Insta, you know, and this and that. But I couldn't make posters of the Slipknot Iowa cover and sell it, you know, on on the site and make a
Sure.
buck. That would get me into trouble. And but what I am working on is a more of a I wouldn't say, well, I wouldn't call it a biography on my career. It's more a collection of stories. Like, yeah, how did I first get hooked up with Kiss? So I tell that story of the initial
The
meeting
meeting.
in the conference room with all these suits, and or how did you meet Eddie Van Halen? How did you get in touch with Slipknot? And so I have tons of stories, tons of anecdotes. Some are goofy, silly, some are serious, um, and how one thing kind of led to another. So my whole idea is it's not a book on like how to become a successful graphic designer, but maybe it's a book that I can inspire somebody young. And
Yeah.
I've had people over the years come to me and say, you know, like, oh, you know, because of your Slipknot record, I decided I wanted to become a graphic designer. And I said, you know what? I was just like that. When I first heard of hypnosis, Storm Thorgerson and Roger Dean, and you know, and some of those other designers in the U.S. Who did covers for in the '60s and '70s, I'm like, I want to be like that guy or these guys, you know. So it's all about giving back. And when people, we've had people like intern at our studio, maybe sometimes just for a week or a month, you know, or I would talk to people on the phone and give them advice, whether it's like about what should I charge them, you know, or how to go about. I have this, you know, I mean, you know, just asking for advice. So I'm working on this book, writing when I ever have a little off time, and that will have like a doodle or a sketch, like
Sure. Yeah.
from that Kiss box set meeting. I have a photocopy of Gene's drawing of the guitar case that he signed and put his phone number on there for me. Uh, so you'll have little sketches or funny things like that that was the origin of a project or
Yeah. Like
things like
something that just kind of shows the germination of what it turned into. I honestly love the idea of a book like that because it is inspiring because it's like you started out here, but because you did this and because of where you're at, it worked the way up to what you have now. It could definitely inspire some young graphic designers that want to pursue this angle and just show
yeah.
that the steady progression. I love the idea of it, and it's truly wonderful. Where can people check out your portfolio online?
So it's very simple. It's t42design.com. So it's the letter T, the number 4, the number 2, design.com. The company name came from so my wife, um, her name is Toby, although she's a female, she has a guy's name. So when, you know, back almost 30 years ago, when, well, 97 or whatever it was, when it came to deciding on a name, you know, Tom, Toby, T, two T's, T42, T42. So that's where the company name came from, basically, from the two T's.
Cool.
in our names. And yeah, we have an Instagram. I think it's t42_design. I post sometimes also more personal things, or if I'm on a trip, I go to a cool museum, or of course, I talk about projects that are coming out, and yeah, so those are obviously on Facebook, um, there as well. But yeah, I'm trying to think. Did we get it all in, or yeah? So just maybe quickly, another thing that I love
Yeah.
doing is these coffee table books.
Yes. Yes.
Those again really fun. A lot of work, many months of work, but a lot of fun, like photo research, photo editing, establishing a story, because all these projects are about telling a story, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other if it doesn't tell a story, it's boring to me. It's like, it's just a bunch of pictures that mean nothing. Or like, I don't know if you can see this we did last year. This is for Kirk Hammett from Metallica.
Oh yeah.
He has a massive guitar collection, and not just massive, but he has incredible instruments. Of course, a lot of vintage stuff. And if you're a guitar nerd like me, this is the book to have.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, it's a really cool book. We got to work with him and his manager, and Ross Halfin, our friend, the photographer. He did a lot of the location and product photos. So again, while it's about guitars, we didn't want to make it look like a guitar catalog. We
Sure.
want to
Yeah.
tell a story about who is Kirk Hammett really. I mean, we know him as like the shredder in Metallica, but we didn't know that Kirk Hammett loves reggae music. He loves Bob Marley.
Sure.
He loves, like, he's just and when I met him last year, yeah, he's like a super fan. He loves music. He loves all the bands we love. He was really into Kiss. Um, so that was a really fun project that we did, this big book for Alice Cooper. And you know we've done various books at Van Halen, and one on Eddie, Motley Crue. There's more to come next year.
Hell yeah. And believe me, I cannot wait to hear all about it. Tom, thank you so much for being on board. This was an absolute blast, man.
Yeah, anytime. My pleasure. My pleasure. If I can convey or clarify some things that people are speculating about. It's funny sometimes. Like, just one last thing. Just not too long ago, one guy on the forum said, "Man, they must have two big teams working on these two box sets this year." And I'm sitting here in my house here in the south of France, and I'm thinking, I would love to pick up the phone and talk to that guy right now and said, "No, dude."
Just
it,
air out, be like, I had to do this for
yeah,
6 months.
it's me, Ken Sharp, a few people at Universal, and a few other people who are sort of involved,
Contributing.
and then of course the guys that I have in the credits, but they're not directly involved in the projects. They just
Mere
submit.
contributions. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the people that are physically working on these projects, it's probably 5 people.
It's a small circle. My
Very
gosh.
small circle. It's not a huge ad agency where 20 people are involved, or
Yeah.
anything like this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
insane. But seriously, it's tremendous work. I am excited to see what you have cooking up for 2026. And once again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course.
Thank
Anytime.
you.
Anytime. It's good talking to you, Dylan.
Great time, man. So there you guys go. That is the 9th episode of Council of the Elder, talking about designing Kiss box sets and vinyl reissues with Tom Jermann of T42design. If you have any suggestions on future episodes and who to have involved in the series, please shoot me a comment down below. I'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the records spinning.